Welcome on in.
Before I do anything, baby, show me where you are. Not just a taste. I look in the mirror, I see every little thing, so I know I'm not imagining.
We're gonna start in a few minutes. Um, yeah, everyone, feel free to type in the chat where you're tuning in from. Nice. We got LA, Chicago, Denver, Philly, Sacramento, DC. Oh, totally. Actually, speaking of which, let me drop Discord in the chat. For those of you who are not already in our Discord community, here is the server invite. Feel free to join. New Orleans, nice. Cool. All right. Let me go ahead and turn this down. Hello, everybody. How are you all doing? Happy Thursday. My name is Minnie Bear, aka Lauren is my legal name. I am the Chief Education officer for FemHouse, which basically means that I create the curriculum on the music production side of things, teach the online and in-person workshops, and teach the workshops as online courses as well, and create the curriculum for those courses. Yeah, if is there anyone actually here who is new to FemHouse's community, is tuning in for the first time um, to a FemHouse workshop? Also, who is a returning FemHouse person? Nice, new to FemHouse. Welcome, welcome. Um, so just a little bit of info. Oh, I love seeing new faces. Returning, yes, I remember your name, Emily. You've been following socials for a while. It's your first workshop. I'm so glad you're here. Yeah, so just a little bit about FemHouse, and then I'll share a little bit about me as well. But yeah, so basically, we're a nonprofit whose primary mission is to basically make the music industry, and particularly like the technical areas of music, more equitable in terms of like gender, and also just like more accessible. Hence this workshop today being free. We have in the past typically have had about, I would say, like two online courses a year. So like basically the difference between a FemHouse workshop and a course is, a workshop is usually like an hour to 2 hours long. And today I would say like maybe it's on the shorter side just based on the topic. And then the online courses run for about a month and usually contain like four online classes. They're about like 2 hours long each. And then yeah, typically I usually like will record like pre-record, like basically upload pre-recorded videos on the various topics that are like within that course. And then usually there's also like PDF content that you can access, like notes and other little goodies and quizzes and things like that. So it's basically a little bit more immersive versus like a workshop where it's kind of just like a one-off, like we're going to go over some cool things today. Um, yeah, in addition to that, we have, many, many things. Actually, I'll share the FemHouse site link in case you don't have it. But we have a scholarship program. So every year we usually have like between like 4 to 6 scholarship students that basically get one-on training with me in terms of like music production lessons, and they've gotten like free gear and things like that. So yeah, we have a fellowship program. We have, we've had in the past like also like festivals where FemHouse has been involved, and you can like basically like if you win, like you submit your DJ mix and win a contest, then you get an opening slot at a festival, which is pretty sick because yeah, anyhow. But that's just a little small tidbit of everything that we've done. We also have a radio show on Sirius XM, and it's been really cool to see how things have grown in the past few years, and specifically for me, see the community grow. So, which is why it's really cool to see new faces in the chat every time, and also to see familiar faces in the chat. Yeah, a little bit about me. I am a producer, songwriter, educator. I wear many, 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 many hats. I've been producing, making music since, gosh, I don't know. I would say like producing. I started in Logic, then transitioned to Ableton since like 2010. Started using Ableton around like 2012. And yeah, production is a passion of mine. Sharing knowledge is also a passion of mine. I always love sharing things that I've learned along the way. And the really cool thing is that learning never ends because it is endless. There's always new things to learn, and technology is always changing, which is very, very exciting to me. But yeah, today's particular topic, let me actually go ahead and share my screen. And also, does anyone have any just general questions? I dropped some housekeeping things in the chat, but basically this is being recorded. So that way you can kind of return to these topics anytime you'd like. And yeah, there's a Q&A box if you want to drop questions in there at any point. Usually I stop from time to time to look at the questions so I can address them, and then we'll make sure that there's time at the end. I answer questions as well. Yeah, let me share my screen here. Go up, up. Thank you, by the way, also for joining me at noon on a Thursday. I guess like noon Pacific Standard Time. Normally our workshops are a bit later, around 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, but I live in LA and it has been very hot and I don't have central AC, so 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. is literally the worst time to be in my apartment. So hence why we're doing this early today. But yeah, today's topic, and by the way, can everyone hear me okay? How are the sound levels? Can everyone see my screen? I'm gonna move this over here. And yeah, typing in the chat and chatting in the chat is always really helpful because it makes me feel like I'm not talking to myself. Yeah, there has been a heat wave in LA. We got like a little bit of a reprieve actually. This week it kind of cooled off slightly, but it's about to creep up back to like 95, I think, this weekend. So cool time. But yeah, today is interesting. It's an interesting topic because it is very different from the topics that we normally teach. I feel like the topics that we normally teach in regards to music production is like more like hands-on production type stuff. So like sound design stuff and arranging and things like that. Today is more, I would say, like organizational type stuff, which is, I just thought about this last night, but we have just entered Virgo season. So I actually feel like this is the perfect, most appropriate topic right now. Um, yeah, and I'll kind of go over in just a moment what this general topic entails, building a sound library. But actually, I'll talk about that first, and I'll explain why I am the perfect person to teach this topic. So yeah, essentially building a sound library is actually, I'll ask the chat, what does this sound like to you? And I'm sure you probably read the workshop description um, before you signed up. Also, what is it that you're wanting to learn today or get out of this workshop? Um, And I'll give you some hints. So like basically like building a sound library, it's many things. So it's like literally building your sound library, creating your own samples and then saving them, creating own sounds from scratch and saving them like synths, presets. Yeah, like you mentioned, building a set of go-to sounds for streamlined ideating. Oh, I love that word, ideating. Um, Finding sounds you like to use in your work so that workflow sounds better. Yeah. So I wanna mention that building a sound library. So today we're not gonna just be talking about like creating your own sounds, like it basically like doing sound design and saving your own sounds. I feel like this also can include finding the sounds that you like to use that you basically want to like include part of your sound palette. I feel like that's like a huge part of being a producer is creating your sonic world and like basically creating your palette. Think about like your favorite producers and how they have a very distinct sound. And usually I would say like it's usually because they they really dive deep into sound design and have found way to basically like create their own sound just from literally shaping sound. But I feel like a lot of times, honestly, it's just like using very specific sounds that have like a specific aesthetic and vibe. And to your point, Emily, yeah, it's just like finding the sounds that you like. But imagine like if you were to do that every single time you open up your session and you're like, all right, now I got to build a whole drum kit from scratch and like find all these samples and stuff, which to be fair, that is part of the process. But I find that like when I talk to people about like the main blocks, creative blocks there are when you're going to make a song, usually honestly it's like finding the right sounds. People like spend hours like finding a kick, right? Um, Emily mentioned, I'm here today because I'm about to embark on editing and arranging like 12 tracks of gymnastics floor music. Wow. I will need extra sounds to add into places in these tracks for transitions. Cool. Yeah. Um, but yeah, so essentially like today we're going to be talking about like how to basically save your own samples and sounds, like maybe synth presets that you created to your library and be able to access them really easily. Um, being able to organize and find sounds, just like general sounds that you want to use. And the whole point of this, yeah, is to just like make your workflow easier. Um, cool. And what we're gonna start with is essentially, and so we are gonna be using Ableton today as a basically because that's the DAW that I use to kind of demonstrate these concepts. But you know, the same can be applied honestly for like any DAW. It's just like might be applied a little bit differently. Like Logic, for example, has their version of the browser, has a library, right? And there's probably like different ways of like saving things, but the concept is like pretty much the same. Um, so yeah, that being said, let's talk about the browser. And by the way, I am using Ableton Live 12, which is a little bit different than the previous version, Live 11, in terms of what the browser looks like, but a lot of it is also the same. So yeah, let's talk about just what the browser is. So the browser is basically essentially like a library. It's like a library of sound of where you can find like samples, where you can find synths and things like that. Basically, your tools for creating. Um, I always find that keyboard shortcuts are really handy because that just makes you faster, right? So, just a couple of really fun, quick shortcuts in Ableton Live is Option Command B, which basically will open, I'll type that in the chat, open the browser without you having to click on this yellow button up here. So, I find that that's really handy. Option Command B. Also, another faster way of accessing it, actually, technically, because it's like, so like, for example, if I go open the browser and then I want to search for something, I would click up here, right, and then type. But a faster way of doing that actually is using the key command, and I'll type it in here, Command F. So Command F, oops, I just typed that into Zoom by accident. All right. So Command F in Ableton will automatically pop you into the browser, and then you can type like snare. Yes, you might have missed my messages. Let me see. Can I pin this actually in the chat? No, that'd be a really awesome thing if I could pin this message. But yeah, in the chat box, I mentioned at the top that it is being recorded. Cool. Also, if you have questions throughout, if you just like kind of jumped in a little bit late, there is a Q&A box, and it's really helpful to pop the questions in there because sometimes I look at the chat and then I get distracted in my ADHD. I get derailed. Yeah, so you can type Command F, just type what you're looking for, and then that's just like a really quick and easy way to get in and out of the chat. A couple of new things. For those of you who use Live 12. So actually, show of hands in the chat. When I say show of hands, you could just type in the chat. Who here has Live 12? If you're brand new to Ableton, by the way, they do offer a 30-day free trial, which is pretty sick. But nice. Yeah, so they basically added some like really cool, very helpful things in Live 12, specifically in terms of searching and being able to like find things really quickly with like tagging in Live 12, which I find to be really, really helpful. So we're going to talk about some of these things. So, and the reason why I made this slide is because this makes it easier for me to remember what I'm about to talk about. So yeah, we've got search, Command F, and then yeah, so we've got just the search function in browser, and we have what are called filter groups and tags. So let's take a look at that. Still on 11, need to upgrade. Yeah, so the Command F still applies to Live 11. But yeah, what I'm about to talk about is like a newer feature that When you do upgrade, you will definitely appreciate, because I appreciate it, and it makes your workflow much easier. So you'll see that up here, there are all of these little items here. So audio, clip, device, groove, image, tool, preset, bass, brass, and so on and so forth. So these are what are called filter groups. So there's basically a newer feature in Ableton Live, which when I say newer, I guess Live 12 came out last year. It feels like it just came out. But essentially, like, it just basically allows you to filter out what you don't want to see and be able to find what you do want to find. Meaning that if I'm looking, let's say, for a pad, I can click here, and then it's going to basically like filter out everything else. And so if I'm like some, like, let's say for example, Wavetable is specifically an Ableton Live synth. If I click on the arrow, it'll show me all the presets here. So right now, these are only just the pads. Sorry, and hot tip, it's so loud. But if you want to turn down the volume for these preview sounds, so like when I click on these, it previews the sound. Over here on the main track, you can turn down this headphone knob, and that will adjust the preview volume, which also, by the way, adjusts the metronome volume. Cool. And let's just say, like, if I click on this arrow next to character, there are some other filter groups here. So I can say, like, I'm looking for something that's like cinematic. That's so specific. Okay, there's not that many. But if I click here, there's this one pad that's cinematic, apparently. Or if I'm looking for something that's like a stab. Okay, that's not really a stab, but like a pluck. So we hear that little transient pluck. So that's kind of cool because that kind of helps you to narrow down like what you're looking for. I'll show you in a minute how you can actually, like, how does this work? Like, how does it know that these are like plucks and pads and things like that? But yeah, that's kind of like the gist of this, is that we have these filter tags. And if I'm searching for something, by the way, like let's just say I'm looking for like chorus, which is an effect. So because all is selected right now, it's searching my entire library, right? But then let's just say I know I'm specifically looking for an audio effect. I can click on audio effects, and then it's only going to look within this particular category. If I'm looking, let's say for, we'll talk about this area down here in a minute, but if I'm looking for, let's say, like a hat, again, I can look through all, but if let's say I'm looking through a folder that's on my computer, I can select the folder, and then it's specifically going to look through like those folders. And by the way, like once you're like, all right, I don't want to look at only these options anymore, I can then click on clear, and that gets rid of that. Cool. So let's talk about like, all right, then what are these things? So these are filter groups, but like what are these items here? What are, like, how did we get to this point of where we can know that this is a kick or whatever? Well, first of all, Ableton does have an algorithm where it just like will automatically tag things. But if you notice, like, let me go back to all here. And like, actually, let's go to instruments, and then let's go to, let's like my wavetable presets here. So if I select, let's say like this one here, actually, let me find, I might have to find like, let's go to drums, and let's just find, there we go. Yeah, so do you see how like here, let me actually select the 808 like core kit here. Yeah, so it's interesting because some of them actually automatically have tags and others don't. But so basically, like if you look down here, it says 808 bass, MPE enabled, which we're not going to get into it, but MPE is a very specific thing. And then punchy, sub, synth bass. So these are basically different types of what are called tags. So, and like basically they have these like categories as well. So content, type, sounds, character, right? So character is literally the character of the sound. So punchy, my best guess is, yep, it is a character tag. And so if I wanted to, let's say, like add different tags, I actually kind of go up here. And by the way, you can also hide these filter options by clicking on the orange thing. And then if I click on this arrow, um, so yeah, notice how these are actually the groups here: content, type, sound, drums, character. So if I didn't want character to show up, I could select that and it would disappear. But then I also can open the tag editor and let's just say, yeah, so notice that there's actually like tags that there's an item for or an option for, but it's not showing up over here. It's like hiding. So like, let's just say, let's go to character, actually, the character group. So yeah, if I wanted like bright, I could select that. And so basically what I'm doing is I can basically like add these tags to down here. So if I select dark, that would show up over here. So these are pre-existing tags that basically I can tag different like samples or different like synths and so on and so forth. And then if you continue to scroll down, you can also add your own tags and your own groups. So for example, if they don't already exist, you can add them yourself. And what's neat, they actually like added this more recently. Rather than having to go in here, open the tag editor to add a tag, I could be like, I don't know, if I wanted to add like dark, I could just literally type it in here. Or if I want to get rid of it, I can just exit out, which is pretty sick. So yeah, I'm just showing you this because tagging I feel like can be really helpful. This is really cool too because I don't know if anyone is familiar with ADSR. This particular, it's like a standalone app basically, but it's kind of like a similar concept. This is free, by the way. So if you want like a standalone sample manager that I feel like this might go a little bit more in depth, but it's pretty similar. I kind of like having it in like Ableton, but I think this actually would, like, you can use this as a plugin within Ableton, but this is like a similar concept essentially where you can like tag sounds and then be able to find them easily. And you know, that's kind of like part of the problem with workflow, right? It's like you're trying to find a specific kind of kick, but then you're just like all of a sudden you're like trying to like go like this, not like that, but you're like, I'm searching for kick. And then you're just like, which is like so funny because there's just producers everywhere in the world probably doing that right now. But my point is if you kind of just like put in the work of tagging, that will help you to find what you're looking for. It's like a tool that can help you to find what you're looking for. And one caveat I actually wanted to share today before we like dive in a little bit deeper is I feel like I'm like the perfect person to teach this topic because the thing is, and this is just so ironic, because I actually like know the tools that you need that will basically be helpful for just like making your workflow easier and organizing and things like that. But because of my ADHD and just like my desire to just like sit down and create right away, is I absolutely have not done that work. It's like, but you know what? It's Virgo season, and it's something that is definitely on my to-do list of being starting to do that because it is really important. And proof is in the pudding. Because like just this past week, I like literally, you know, it's so easy to go into rabbit holes, but I spent like 3 hours trying to like sound design this one kick, or like because I like wanted to like use this very specific kick, and then I was like trying to find it. And so yeah, it's just an example of like the more organized you are, the more time you'll have basically to like on being creative. And my recommendation honestly is just like spend a day or like a session where you spend on organizing and saving things, and that will just like give create more time in the future, which can be said for anything really. um cool, so we've got search, we've got filter groups, we've got tags, and then yeah, another feature of Ableton Live, which has been kind of around for a minute, but are collections. So basically that's this up here. So these, again, this could be more organized, but these have been labeled by me. So basically we have a few different colors here: red, orange, yellow, green, and so on and so forth. So, you know, you can right click, rename these categories. So I've got fave synths, favorites, which is very general, racks, which we'll talk about later, cool from here, I think, is like for when I'm teaching and I want to showcase or use different samples. Um, and then I've got like my favorite drums, effects, and things like that. So basically, if you were like, okay, I want to quickly be able to access certain things, like let's just say my favorite effects, what you could do is basically find what you're looking for, right click on it, and then select the color. Or, you can type the number that's corresponding here, like 6, for example, and that will basically add it to this collections area over here. So, again, just like another tool that you have for like being able to find something a little bit quicker. Um, all right. So this is something actually that I was going to say for later, but I'm just going to show you now because I think it's like one of the cooler things that they've added in Live 12. And it's a function called Find Similar Sounds. And I use this pretty frequently these days for different reasons. But like, let's just say, let's do this. I'm going to drag in, let's just drag in like a drum loop here. Bass loop, drum break. Let me see if I can just. Here, I'll do this, but here, I'm actually going to like this. I'm going to go to music, my DJ folder. Let's do this. Okay. We're just going to drag this in. So I don't know if this is the best example, actually, because I don't think that there are drums where the kick is like particularly isolated by itself. But let's just say. So actually, let me do this. I think it'll be easier to demonstrate if I find a song that has just like the drums in the beginning. Ooh, it's so loud. Perfect. Sorry, it's very punchy. Okay, so all right, so what I'm gonna do is so I can see here the based upon the waveform, and this is probably just the kick. We can hear it actually. So what I could do is I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna select this. I'm going to basically hold down the option key and drag this down here. So I'm basically just like creating a duplicate of just the kick here. But here's the thing. If I double click here on this clip, technically it's like the whole sample, the whole song. So this is a fun little trick here is we're going to consolidate this clip, meaning that we're going to create a new clip with just the kick versus just like having the entire song. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut, but I'll show you that you can also just select it, go to edit, and then you can consolidate, which is Command J. So I'm going to select it, type Command J. So now if I double click on the clip, it's literally just the kick. If I actually want to make this a little bit cleaner, I can just adjust this so that, let's remove this fade here. So it's just literally just the kick. So Command J. All right. So I've got just my kick here. Cool. So if I right click on this audio clip here and I select show similar files, boom. So what it's doing is it's searching my entire library for any similar sounding samples. So, sometimes it'll do a better job than other times, depending upon if a sample like that exists in your library, right? So we can kind of tell by this here, based upon like how close the sample maybe sounds like it. And I find that like sometimes it's right on, sometimes it's not, but essentially like this is basically this is the clip that I just created. That's the original kick. And then if I click here, honestly, like not that far off, kind of. So yeah, basically like it'll search your library for any similar sounding samples, which is like this is the exact same one, but and that's kind of cool because like yeah, sometimes I'm just like I want to create like in a specific genre, but I don't want to use the exact same kick. So this is sometimes a trick that I'll use to find a kick that is in like basically like has like kind of a similar timbre that's like maybe a similar like has a similar what's called fundamental frequency. It sits like in a specific place. So and you can apply that to like a vocal or any type of sample, which I think is really cool. So again, another trick slash tool that you can use to like find things a little bit quicker. Um, cool, which brings us to kind of like our main topic that we're going to talk about for the rest of class, which is the user library. So the user library in Ableton Live is in the browser right here. And it's actually technically it's like down here. So in the browser, we have like this main section here in the library, which is where you can find like your synths and your samples and things like that. Down here under places, I'm going to talk about in just a moment how to save shortcut folders down here. But we also have what's called the user library. And the way that I think about it is like your user library is just like things that you can save that you've created. So that could be like synth presets, that could be like samples that you made, things like that. So, and I'll talk about this a little bit more like once we start talking about racks in just a moment, but like you can kind of see like if I go to actually if I go to clips, this is really helpful, but like I've saved a couple of like drum clips and then also, so these are MIDI clips here, but then also, where is my, like this one here, B minor. It's not the best example actually, a chord progression. So this is a MIDI chord progression here. So actually like that's kind of cool because now if I go into like, let's say my instruments and let's use this feature here. Let's find piano and keys. Cool, this soft chord one. Let's drop this onto this track. And now it'll play this MIDI chord progression that I've saved. So that's kind of cool because if you like, let's just say like you've created like a chord progression that you really like, you can save that, or a melody that you've created, you can save that. So the way that I did that, by the way, is so I'm going to create a MIDI clip by selecting time, Shift Command M. All right, and then I'm just going to do this. I'm going to create like a little melody here randomly. I can set my scale here by doing that. And I'm literally just going to draw in some nonsense here. So like if I wanted to, let's say like save this, here's my user library, right? There are my clips. I can literally just drag this right in here and call this like sick melody or something. And now it's here. Let's delete that. Cool. So that's basically what we're looking at here is that these are saved clips that I have. What are some other ones? What is this one? Oh, I think some of them might be an accident. But most of them I would say are like, yeah, MIDI chords and like melodies and things like that. Okay, and then we've got like presets, so audio effect racks and things like that. So actually, we'll return to this once we start talking about racks. But yeah, main gist of this is just that here is where you can save your stuff. And which brings me to the next thing before we talk about racks, is you can, one thing I would strongly recommend is if you have, let's say like a samples folder, I would organize that somewhere on your computer. So like here I've got my music folder. I have a samples folder. And this could be a little bit better organized, but I have like any samples that I've downloaded from like the site Splice are within this folder here. So here are my sample packs. And then I've got some other sample packs that I've downloaded like outside of Splice. And then I've got, yeah, this could be cleaned up a little bit, but I've got just like different libraries and things like that. But basically, in Ableton Live, so you can add folder down here in places and then basically select your folder of samples, and then it'll show up here. So that's what we're seeing down here is some of the stuff I actually get rid of this now that I'm not working on that project anymore. But basically, yeah, my samples folder here, I can access, and it's basically a shortcut to where the files actually live on my computer. So that's kind of neat. And then yeah, and then I would just like organize it based upon like how your brain works. So actually, a question for the chat: are there any DJs in the chat? Because I actually feel, yeah, cool. I actually feel that organizing, particularly like samples, is not that different from organizing your crates. um, so like my friend is really, I can't, I almost, she's at Burning Man right now. I almost wish that she was here. I wish that she was here because her organizational skills in terms of like how she organizes things actually like blows me away. She is a Virgo rising, which makes sense, but um, yeah, for me, the way that I organize, sometimes I'm like, if someone else were to look at this, it would make absolutely no sense. But to me, a lot of times it does make sense. And I think about it in terms of like DJing. It's like I like to organize like my crates with like DJ like playlists and crates based on how is my brain going to recognize information when I'm in the moment? Like when I'm in the zone, it's a little bit different when you're DJing because like there's more adrenaline, right? And you're just like, I have only this much time before the track ends and I have to find something. And so like for me, it's just like a matter of like tagging files, like adding like text, right? So that when I'm DJing and I'm like kind of stressed sometimes, I can quickly like determine like what kind of track it is. Same thing with like crates, right? It's just like being able to see like, oh, this is the name of the crate. It's like poolside or like this is the vibe or whatever. So I kind of think the same thing of like organizing your stuff, organizing your samples is like for me a lot of times it's like genre, right? It's just like an easier way to find samples. Like if I'm looking specifically for like UKG kicks and things like that, I want to be able to like be able to find those things really easily. um yeah, as a fellow ADHD person, I try doing both. Exactly. So I feel like I'm a great person to teach this because it's so relatable, right? So I think it's like, and that actually speaking to that is that all of our brains are different, right? And then like, so in that, in that regard, like you kind of have to like organize your shit based on how your brain works. And that's why it's like I'm not gonna like I'm basically sharing this information with a grain of salt because it's like I basically am encouraging you to kind of like figure out and learn how your brain works because there's not just one way of organizing things. It's just like it's it's better. I think it's like it's smarter. It's like working smarter, right? It's smarter to kind of figure out how your brain works so that like when you're in the mode of creating, I would just like pay attention to, and I'm trying to do this when I'm DJing now, like pay attention to where your brain automatically gravitates to when you're trying to find something. So if you're like, I want to find this type of kick that's like punchy, you're like, oh, maybe I should like create a folder of like that's called punchy kicks or something like that, you know. I already paid top dollar for someone to go through the thousands of tracks and samples I need to organize. Yeah. So but in that respect though, it's like they would need to understand your brain as well. So that being said, um yeah, that's how you I would recommend saving your folder shortcuts. And then I'm going to talk about, yeah, let's jump into like I would say the most important topic for this workshop, which is I'm going to actually reverse this. We're going to, before we talk about sample saving, we're going to talk about racks. Just because I think it's really important. Is there anyone actually here that attended the racks workshop that we did all about Ableton Live Racks. I feel like we did it like a few months ago. And if you weren't, that's okay. I'm gonna kind of do like a brief overview of what racks are, but I would say like honestly, and this is I will say specifically an Ableton Live thing, but it's like if you don't use racks, I would say if there's anything that you take from this workshop today, it's like start using racks. It is like one of the things, one of the tools that will definitely save you time. Um, but yeah, let's talk about what racks are. So I'm gonna do this. There's different types of racks, but let's talk about drum racks first, actually. So if I go in the browser, if I go to drums, so technically anything that says .adg or ends in .adg is a rack. If you're in the drums category, it's what's called a drum rack. So meaning that if I, let's say, grab this 808 core kit and drag this on here, right? So this is what's considered a rack. So in this case, a drum rack basically contains a bunch of samples in one container. So it all lives on one track right now. So think of it like a hardware drum sampler essentially, where you have a bunch of pads and then you trigger a pad and it plays a sample, plays a sound. Within this rack, we also have these controls here that controls these macro controls, which basically controls different things within this rack. So if I, let's say, turn up the drive amount, it's going to turn up the drive and make it a little bit crunchier. So yeah, basically, like in a lot of ways, it'll like control like volumes and like getting bit on my foot, and different effects and so on and so forth. So if I go over to where it says drum rack and just drag this onto this track, we're gonna basically get a blank drum rack, which basically has no samples in here. And so here's one of the things I encourage you to do. This has saved me time in the past, is basically creating drum racks like ahead of time. So meaning that if like I just basically think of like creating music as like you're shaping your sonic world, right? So, like every sound that you put into your track or your song essentially like will help shape the vibe, help shape the sound. And drum samples greatly influence that. And so for example, if like you're working within a certain genre, let's just say UKG, and I'm going to show you something a little bit later that I tried doing right before class and I realized I was like, oh fuck, can't really do this, which is great because now I can show you. But basically, like if I go to my sample shortcut folder here and let's just drive into like, I don't know, this like 90s Eurodance folder here. And I can go into like my one shots samples here. And yeah, basically just like throw in some samples, maybe throw in a couple of kicks, maybe some claps, maybe some hats. Drums, claps, hats, and so on and so forth, right? Um, yeah, for the sake of time, I'm not going to do like fill this up, but basically it's like the idea is like you could fill up this drum rack, maybe add some effects. So like on this hi-hat here, for example, maybe I want to go to audio effects and then add delay. And I can do that by just dragging it onto the pad. And that sounds crazy, but what if I were to like, let's say, turn on the feedback, turn off sync, unsync the left and right channel, and basically just like do something like this where I'm basically using delay to make the hat a little bit wider. Maybe let's turn down this dry wet. Cool. So yeah, my point here is like you can kind of build your drum kits from scratch with like filling it with the sounds that you want, add some effects, and then when you're done, you can essentially, so this is like a common thing with like saving things in Ableton Live, but let me see if I can zoom in here. Hopefully you can see this. I don't know if you can see this zoomed in, but basically like right up here, there's an image, an icon of a floppy disk for those of you who remember what those are. But basically that means save. So if I click on the floppy disk, ooh, notice that it takes me inside the user library, or it's this in this drum rack folder, and now I can save this here, my drum rack. So anytime I want to find this drum rack, I go into my user library, I go into presets, there's like subfolders here, and then drum rack, and then here it is. Just go ahead and delete that. And that's actually what we're seeing here is I have a bunch of kits here that I've saved. So like, let's just say I want UK drums tight. Cool. So, you know, again, rather than having to dig, like, let's just say I sit down to create, and rather than having to like spend hours finding samples that go together and kind of like go within the genre, go within a specific vibe, you can like create these ahead of time and then have them ready to go. I mean, that being said, like I would say it's like pretty common and when you're working on a song to have to like swap out the kick if you're like wanting to use like a specific bass so that they go well together. But this does save you time. And yeah, I highly, highly recommend it. So that's one kind of rack is a drum kit, a drum rack. Another type of rack is what's called an instrument rack. So if I, let's say, go to my instruments here. So these are Ableton Live 12 synths. And if I click on the arrows, technically these are presets. So you can see that they're labeled here. ADV just means it's a device, like just a synth by itself. ADG means that it's a rack. So actually before I build my own, create my own rack, I'm just gonna double click here to load this preset rack just to show you what it looks like. So it looks like this, where there's a bunch of knobs right here. So we kind of saw this before in the drum rack. These are control the sound, like effects and things like that. If I want to see what's inside of this rack, I can click on the folder icon. It's like the second one from the bottom. So inside of this rack, we can see that there is a wavetable instrument, which is a synth. And then this is kind of hiding, but if I double click where it says velocity, it shows me that there is a MIDI device here. And then if I double click where it says EQ8, it opens up. We can see there's an EQ, double click here, there's a drum bus effect, and then double click here, there's an echo. So, ooh, to save time, so I don't have to create MIDI, I'm gonna go inside my user library, go to clips, and let's just find yeah, let's find that just like a pre-existing MIDI clip here. Let's delete that. I think this is supposed to actually be a lead, so let's find more of a melodic. That's also a chord progression. Not that. And this is where it would be helpful to create folders. Here, let's do that now, actually. So this is where creating folders is helpful. So if I were to, let's say, like create new folder, so I'm selecting this clips folder, right click, new folder. And we're gonna call this melodies. Let's create something in like E minor. Cool. And ooh, this is fun. I'm just gonna show you something really cool. This is not within the scope of this topic today, but if you have Ableton Live 12 Suite, they have these two tabs on the right inside of the clip view here. One of them called MIDI generative tools. So I can basically just create a melody using, let's say, shape. So we're going to do eighth, lower the density. Okay, it's not my favorite melody, but let's turn B. Why is oh, I know why. Oh, there you go. So let's get rid of that. Cool. So that is this rack here. So we basically a rack, just to kind of like boil it down, is basically like a container. So in this case, an instrument rack contains an instrument and potentially like a bunch of effects. So we're going to build one from scratch right now, actually. Let's delete this. So I'm going to go to instruments and let's build one from, let's say, like Drift, because everyone, for those of you who use Ableton, this comes with every version of Ableton Live. So I'm just going to drag this down here and let's just go ahead and shape the sound a little bit. I hate this. We're going to create a new melody. Let's that. Command M. Let's use seed. Okay, sorry, this is a random melody, but like, okay, so we have our instrument here. Let's just say we're just gonna shape our sound. Okay, and let's just say we're gonna add some audio effects now. So let's just say like, let's do chorus, and let's do hybrid delay or hybrid actually, so let's do delay first. Actually, let's do hybrid reverb and then we'll do delay. Cool. And let's just say we're like, sick, love this so much. We're gonna basically create an instrument rack by putting this all in one container. So the way I'm gonna do that is click on the first device here, type Command A, and then type Command G, which basically groups all of these devices into one rack here. What's nice is I can then I've got these buttons on the left now once I've created a rack, and I'm going to click on this icon here, which shows me the macro controls, which we actually saw before. And then we're going to maybe map some things inside of this rack to these knobs. So that way we don't have to dig inside of the rack to control things. So for example, if I want to control, let's say, the filter cutoff, right? So what I can do is I can right click here, map to macro 1. Maybe I want to control the shape of this oscillator here within the synth. I can right click, map to macro 2. let's just say we want to control the amount of, or the dry wet of the chorus, right click map to macro 3. Let's actually rename that. Right click, rename chorus wet. And we're going to do the same thing for like hybrid reverb. We can change the decay time, map to macro 4, and maybe let's also map the dry wet knob to the same reverb decay knob. We'll call this reverb. By the way, you can also change the colors here. So I can change the colors here. Cool. And if I want to save this now, I can click on the floppy disk icon, right? So call this like drift delay or something like that. And I'm showing you this because, again, if we look inside my user library, let's close this clips folder here. If I go inside my presets and scroll down to say like instruments, here are my drum racks actually, and I showed you that before, but then also here are my instrument racks. So I've got these mallets here. I've got, let's not use this one because I think that's actually a third-party plugin. I don't know, what are these mounts, these soft chords here. Ooh, I think there's like a bunch of third-party plugins that don't work anymore. Let's delete that. So let's not use that as an example. I've got, what about this brass delay? There you go. So we'll talk about like saving actually third-party presets, third-party plugin presets in just a moment, but what about this one? Yeah, Goofy lead. Here we go. Super goofy. But yeah, so my point is like basically like you can shape, let's say like a synth sound that you like from scratch, add some effects, save them all within a rack, and then basically anytime you want to use those sounds again, you can save them to your user library and then grab them from there and throw them into your session. And so, you know, if you think about like again your favorite producers who a lot of times use the same sounds or like same types of sounds, it's because they've taken the time to kind of like create these sounds or maybe save their favorite sounds and be able to like pull them really easily every time they go to create and like use similar sounds, you know. So that's actually like one way to do that. It's just like saving, creating these racks and then saving them. And then you can also do that. So I just want to show you like if you have, let's say like a third party plugin, which is basically a plugin that someone else made, like let's say Serum is a good example of that. So a lot of times, third-party plugins will have their own way of saving, let's say, like presets within the you know plugin itself. So for example, yeah. So notice there's a floppy disk icon here within Serum. So if I go to my user section down here, oh, this is Serum too. Yeah, it basically will like show down here. But you know, sometimes I like to be able to just like again like call up my presets within from my user library. So a lot of times what I'll do is like let's just say I either find a preset I really like and or I create a sound from scratch and I want to be able to call it up really easily. So one thing that you can do is we're just going to like choose a random sound here. Is I'll basically turn this into a rack. So right click, group or command G. Now it's a rack. And then again, if I wanted to, I could, you know, add some effects in here. So I can, if I wanted to add effects, by the way, I can just drag this right in here, and just make sure that you're like not dragging this outside of this. You do see how it's like on the outside of this? But if I drag it to the left of this line here, that's going to place it within the rack. So now what I could do is, again, down here, bottom left corner, there's a floppy disk icon. Click here and then call it like UKG bouncy based or something like that. Let me delete that so I don't have this random thing in here. So yeah, you can do that with your third-party plugins, but then you can also do that with like Ableton stock plugins as well. But the main idea is like you can just save your stuff, your instruments, your synths here, so you can be able to call it up really easily. So the same thing with audio effects in that regard is that so let's actually talk about what an audio effect rack is. So that would be like if let's say, want to build a focal chain. That's a really good example, actually, if where I have like EQ and compressor and saturation and I don't know, like chorus and reverb and delay. And let's just say I've got this beautiful vocal chain where I've taken the time to kind of just like, you know, go through my settings and dial things in, right? So if I want to turn this into a rack, what do I do, everybody? What? I select this, type Command A to select everything. What is the key command to grouping these all into a rack? It's a quiz to see who's been paying attention. Command G, love it. Command G, thank you. So now this is an audio effects rack. And again, I can kind of just like keep this as is and just click on the floppy disk icon to save it. Or again, I can click on second bottom from the top on the left to open up this macro controls area, and then map things to these knobs here. So, right click, map to macro 1, and so on and so forth. So again, we're not going to go super deep into racks right now because we did that workshop a few months ago, but I'm showing you this though because I just want to show you some examples of racks that I find to be really helpful. So like, for example, if I'm like, let's just say, let's actually grab a drum clip here. Ooh, and this is actually a fun thing too. So let me delete all this stuff here. So one thing I can do is if I just drag this clip here, so notice how it actually has the MIDI, but technically what I also did is on that track when I saved the clip, it technically had my drum rack and my audio effect rack on there too. So technically this clip saved all of those devices, which is cool because when I dragged in the clip, technically now it also has all of this stuff here. Let's make this 140 because it's super slow. Boom. And now I can just create a song, right? But let's just say I'm going to delete this and I'm just going to use the MIDI here to show you that, all right, cool. Now I can, let's say, find a rack. So I'm going to go to my, I'm going to go to my presets, drum rack, and Trancy Euro drums. Cool, and it looks like I've added some effects in here. And now I'm going to go to, by the way, I'm going to show you an audio effects rack that I use all the time. So it's in my audio effects folder, audio effect rack. And then we've got drums group chain. So I can just drag this to the end here, or I can just double click on that file. and there's a bunch of third-party plugins in here, but basically like this is my audio effect rack for my drums specifically. Think of it like my drums chain. So I've got an EQ, I've got this Ableton Live stock effect called Glue Compressor. I've got Drum Bus, which is also an Ableton effect. I've got FabFilters Pro MB, which is a multi-band compressor, and then I've got a limiter. So, you know, without this chain, one thing I have to do is move some of this MIDI around actually, so that it's on a kick. It's on the wrong one. Let's do quarter notes. And this is supposed to be the kick. Cool. And yeah, I think like the way that I created this MIDI, some of these, the MIDI I think is like in the wrong place. It has to be assigned to the right sample, but that's okay. That's not important right now. So what is important is I just want to show you like, all right, now if I wanted to like add my chain, I can just go like that. It's kind of hard to hear right now because it's not assigned to the right samples, but basically like all of a sudden, like I don't have to like search for an EQ and a compressor and things like that, right? It's just like I already have it in my chain. I throw it on there, and then from that point, I can now adjust like the settings within my effects rack. But that saves me time because essentially like I tend to use like the same effects in my my drum group to kind of like make it sound a certain way. And that, yeah, saves me time every time I go to create a song, so I don't have to do it over and over and over again. And that's like the whole point, really. Similarly, if I have, let's say, like just like hats, what I will often do is like, let's just pretend that this is just like only hats within this drum rack, or let's just say I have a bunch of tracks where, let's actually just do that now. I have a bunch of audio tracks that contain my hats. Let's right click, group these together, or Command G. It's a horrible color. Okay, there we go. So then what I can do is literally just add this chain right onto here. And yeah, so basically this is my hats chain, which contains like a multi-band compressor. And technically you can add whatever you want, right? I can add like an EQ and things like that. But again, saves me time. I don't have to do that like every single time. I'm seeing that there's questions in the Q&A, so let me just see if there's anything I can address based upon what I've already went over. Okay. Jeremy asked, are the tags automatic or can you edit out of them? So it's just going back to what we were talking about before, but yeah, these tags are oftentimes like automatic, but you can also add them. So for example, if I wanted to, let's say, add a tag here, like hats, this doesn't exist right now, right? Like I can add basically a tag that already exists, but if I wanted to add a new tag, I can go click on the arrow up here, open up the tag editor, and then if a tag does not already exist, I can add it here. Actually, we probably want to go to the category that it belongs in. So if it's just like, I don't know, mixing and mastering or EQ and things like that, what you would do is you would add the tag there within that category, and then it'll allow you to just like add the tag here. So yeah, sorry, that was a little bit of a sidebar, but I wanted to make sure I answered that question. Okay, I'll answer V's question actually towards the end here. Okay, so yeah, let's take a look at maybe a couple of other. We're going to talk about samples in just a moment, but just some other examples of like really helpful racks that you could save. So like audio effect racks, vocal chains, honestly, I would say it's probably like one of the more common ones. So you can see if I go in my folder here. So again, I created folders by just right clicking within the main folder and then selecting new folder. So that's what we have here. So I've saved vocal racks from specific songs. And then these are just like some other random racks here. So I've got my a simple vocal chain. There's like a vocal box rack chain, which is like mostly I think Ableton effects. Um, and then I've got the one that I probably use the most. And then I'll just like literally like edit things and just delete things depending upon what I'm trying to do or achieve. Um, cool. But yeah, I've got just like my basic normal chain that I would use here. And then I can just like literally add on to yeah, my vocals anytime I want, which is really cool. We've got yeah, this like transgate thing. So if I go to my samples and choose so like a loop, melodic. Let's look for a pad. Yeah. So this is not a hat, but oh, I see what I did here. Let's add this onto here, even though it's not a hat. Right? And then I can just like edit this if I want to. But yeah, if this again, this is just like a basic effects rack that I created ahead of time. And like anytime I want a specific sound, I can just literally just like quickly drop it onto a track. Um, cool. So I think that's like pretty much what I want to share about racks. And then we're going to talk about creating your own samples and saving them. But yeah, let me use this as a stopping point to answer the other question. But yeah, any other questions so far? Or yeah, just the concept of racks makes sense and just like why they're really useful. And I feel like I've only like honestly tapped the surface into how you can utilize racks. But in short, like it really does save you time. And there's a lot that you can do with them. Yeah, I think I already answered that question about the recording. And then, yeah, can you save a template with the tracks preloaded with the effects that you use often? Yeah, you can also do that as well. So actually, like if let's go back into my user library here. So yeah, and by the way, I've got auto filter effect rack here that I've saved. And I also created a folder, just sidebar here, called synths. So basically like these are all the presets that I've created for different categories of sounds. So that's like one thing that you can do. Um, and then, yeah, see how there's a folder called templates. So what I would suggest doing if you just decide to do that, it's just like basically create like set up your template the way that you want, like with like different effects. So like, for example, you can see here, maybe it'll be easier to see it this way, but like, so these on the left hand side or right hand side rather are my reverb return tracks or reverb and delay return tracks. So these are like the types of reverbs that I like to use essentially like in every session. So like plate reverbs, bigger reverbs, large reverbs, delays and things like that. So to be honest, like When I like set up a template, I'm not like super dialed in because I do like to leave room for creativity, right? I don't want to like create the same thing every single time. But I do find that if I'm like tending to use like, you know, plate reverbs and bigger reverbs and things like that, I like to have a general setup. So that being said, let's just say you're like, all right, this is the way I want it set up. Then you go to file and then you can where is it, save live set as template, and where it will save it is in the user library in this template section here. So yeah, that's actually, they make it like really easy to do that. Cool. So we're gonna jump into, there's no questions about racks. Does it make sense, by the way? Yes, no. We're gonna talk about samples, like saving samples, basically. Um, so I just want to show you a couple examples, and I feel like I could do more work with like saving mine and going through my finished sessions and saving my samples. But basically, again, if I go into my user library, there's a samples folder. Oh, one thing I wanted to show you, I was trying to get fancy and I was like, you know what? I'm going to consolidate all of my UKG kicks in one place and have them in my user library. But then I realized that what I was doing is I was dragging the samples from my shortcut folder, from my basically my sample packs, my splice sample packs, over to the user library. And what it does is it basically just moves it from where it is. Let's say if you use a Mac in the Finder, from where it is, like let's say in the samples folder to your user library folder, wherever that is over here. So it'll actually move it. It doesn't create like a shortcut. So I'm just letting you know that in case you're like, I'm just gonna move everything in the user library. What I've discovered is that it's probably easier to just like organize your samples in a samples folder that lives on your computer and then just create that shortcut here. And then in your user library, what you could do is actually, I'll show you here. You can create racks with, let's say, like your favorite kicks or things like that, or like, where did I do that? I did it presets probably. Instruments, drum rack. Oh my God, it just got really hot all of a sudden. I should have put on my AC. Anyway, somewhere over here, I basically created a kick rack. Actually, let's do this kick. Instrument rack, percussive. There we go. Oh, it's right here. There we go. A wavetable samples. There we go. It's in my samples folder. Drums, kick rack. There it is. Kick rack. So here's my kick rack. And if I do that, there's my stupid kick that I've created, and it's within my rack here. Okay, so let's do this. Let's just take a look at an example of a couple of samples I saved here. So here is a vocal transition that I created. That's my own sound. Cool. So that's something I can use in a transition. And then I've got a snare roll. Which weirdly enough, I find that it's really hard to find the right snare roll. So I started creating my own with just like using MIDI and then like basically converting it into audio and saving it, which I'm going to show you how to do right now. All right, so let's actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this file here. Let's not save that. Let's delete that. So no questions, no other questions so far. Best practices. I'm going to turn on the fan. weirdly humid in LA. Weird, weird weather. Okay, so let's just look at a couple of different ways in which you can like save samples here. So I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna look at. Okay, we're gonna just play a little small snippet of this. I'm just gonna turn this down a little bit just because it tends to play really loud in Ableton. Let's go actually before the big drop. Cool. So like what if I wanted to save this vocal? And actually what I would do is, so I added this like little vocal snippet here to create a manual delay. And actually there's like actually delay on this track itself. But what I'm gonna do is we're gonna create a new audio track. So Command T, and I'm gonna do something called resampling, which is basically when you record the audio from like whatever audio is playing onto a new track. So we're gonna apply that approach first in terms of like saving samples. So I'm gonna, where it says external in up here, I'm gonna click here and then choose resampling. And then I'm going to arm this track to record onto it. And cool. So let's, and actually, let me just, yeah, we'll do that. Okay, so I'm going to now click on the record button. And actually, what is going on here? Because I only want to play. Oh, I see. Okay. We don't want that part. All right, we're going to do that again. We're going to record that again from here. Cool. So here's my sample. Beautiful. So what I'm going to do, so here's the thing. If I were to, your first instinct is probably to like go into the user library. Maybe you want to drop into the My Samples folder and just drag it directly in here. What's actually going to happen though is it basically saves the clip, which basically means that like, if I go like that, create a new audio track, and then drag this over here, it actually is just, it's like literally just saving the clip. And there's, if I were to have saved this with like, let's say effects on that track, it actually would have saved the, like the devices on the track as well, meaning that this track would then populate with those effects. But what I want to do is I actually want to save the WAV file. I don't want it to say .alc, which means a clip. I want it to be saved as an actual WAV file. So what I'm going to do, instead of doing this, it's such a weird roundabout way of doing this, but I'm going to right click and then I'm going to show in Finder, or sorry, and show in browser. So here's the file. And then actually, if I want to get fancy, I can type Command J to consolidate this clip, basically creating a new clip. Show in browser. And then go to my samples. Oh, sorry, go to my current go to my user library, and then drop it in here. So technically saved as an AIF, but that's fine. It's like the same. So we can rename this. I don't know, airy vocal or something like that. Sorry, it's so loud. Delete. Move to trash. Oh, stop it. All right. Anyhow, so that's like one way of doing it. I'm gonna show you actually. I'll wait. Like, let's just say I want to create like a new sample. I basically just like took this as is. And by the way, so this sample contained like 2 tracks in one. And that's like a really cool thing about resampling is you can basically like pull audio that's playing from multiple tracks and just like bake them into one track or one sample, which is really cool. What I'm going to do right now, though, is I'm going to just record the reverb. So so okay, so we're gonna do so A is the reverb, I guess. So we're going to solo just the return track. Am I clicking in the right place? Where did it go? Did it delete it by accident? Oh, there it is. Okay. Cool. So we're going to, let's delete that. Record this. We're basically recording the reverb right now that's playing. Cool. It's not the best example because the reverb's really small, but actually let's do this to kind of demonstrate this properly. I'm going to we're gonna send this to the large reverb instead. Sick. Okay. I think we're also hearing the risers going into that reverb, but that's cool. So let's go ahead and record that. Where did it go? Resampling. So normally I would have just like isolated just like the vocal, but that's okay. I kind of think it kind of sounds cool. So what I'm going to do here is now double click here and we're going to reverse this sample. So technically we can click on reverse, but actually an easier way to do that is just select the clip and press R. So that's kind of cool. And yeah, what if I were to like, let's say now add delay to this and just right click, show automation. I'm basically gonna like I'm gonna automate turning on the delay at the very end. Let's do ping pong delay. Okay, that's fun. So again, I've kind of gone down these rabbit holes of like creating the sound, and like we've seen that like we can like save it to our user library by either just like finding out, right clicking, showing in browser, or finding out where the sample is, and then dragging it into our user library. What we can also do is like, let's just say I want to save this sample now with like this effect baked in. I can right click, and this is like a newer feature by the way, but I can right click here and then I can bounce track in place, which basically is going to print. It's gonna like, if you have any effects on your track. So actually like to kind of show this a little bit better, let's add another effect here, like auto pan maybe. That's kind of cool. So yeah, if I now right click here on the track header and then select bounce track in place, um, yeah, so now what it did is it basically created a new, basically an audio clip that contains the effects baked in. And actually, weirdly, it created like a separate clip here, the tail. So I'm going to select both of these clips here, Command J to consolidate them together. That's actually pretty sick. So I am going to say this to my user library because I think it's really cool. So again, I can right click, show in browser. And also, by the way, if you're like, oh, I want to like export it as like a specific type of file and import it in, by all means, you can do that. You can, go to file, export audio, and then just literally export it as whatever file type you want, and then just literally just drag it back into the user library. By the way, your user library is Ableton. It's over here in the Ableton folder, user library. So technically, like I can drag whatever I want. Like if I have specific WAV files I want to put in here, let's say, yeah, in the samples folder, mini bear samples, I could do that. I could just export the file out and then import it, just drag it in there. But for now, let's just show in browser and drag it in here. Cool. Any questions so far? The same can be said, by the way, for like synths. Like if you have, let's use another example here. Like this one here, don't save. Yeah, bouncing track in place, resampling. And let me go through the chat at the beginning to see if there's anything I missed here. This. Yeah, so I think to answer your question also, yeah, Emily, when you're for the project that you're about to do, or not, it wasn't really a question, but yeah, definitely recommend like creating your folders. That will make things easier for you. And then also, if there's a sound that you like in your library, I would try that show similar sounds function, because that'll kind of like weed out or basically help you find things that you want to find also and organize those accordingly. But so yeah, let's just say like you have a synth that you like. Same thing. This is probably gonna be pretty loud. So let's add utility on here. Cool. So it's like a really cool synth transition that happens here. Let me see if I can find it. I think it's this. That's so sick. I mean, it's very specific to the song, but again, if I wanted to like save this sample, I have a couple of options. I could either literally just right click here, bounce track in place. It's going to basically convert this into audio. I could export this file, maybe select the time that I want to export. Let's do 1 bar. one, two. Let's actually do 1, 2, 3, 4. And then file, export audio, and then basically select the track that you want to export audio for, or I can do some resampling. Choose resampling, and then record that here. Okay, it's probably a little bit too long, but here we are. And man, you can go down some rabbit holes, right? Like maybe I just want to select this like little piece of audio here and then do some sound designy stuff, like I don't know, go like that or something, and like I don't know. And then you can just save it to your user library. And that's I keep coming back to that, saving it to your user library, because that's what's gonna make you faster, your workflow. But yeah, any questions? Any questions about like creating samples, saving things? Yeah, as I mentioned, today is gonna be like a shorter workshop than normal, just because I feel like, yeah, I feel like that's the extent I think of the most important things I would say, like the most important tools that you could use in terms of just like organizing and finding things. But yeah, I strongly recommend doing it. So there's like the organizational aspect of why it's important to do these things, and then there's like the creating your world aspect. The more, because if you think about it, yeah, the more songs that you produce, especially if you like to dive a lot into like sound design, um, for one, using certain sounds in other songs can be really helpful, right? For like kind of identifying your sound, or like establishing your sound, I should say. But also like, yeah, it makes you like quicker at workflow in terms of just like being able to recall these sounds like really quickly. But also it's just like you use like certain sounds in like other songs, and then people will be like, "Ooh, I recognize that sound," right? It's like your samples. Think about like sample packs that like artists have put out, right? Um, but yeah, I highly recommend using these tools, particularly Racks. If there's anything that you can take away from today, specifically if you use Ableton, is to start using Racks, because that will definitely improve your workflow. But yeah, no questions. Any like anything that we haven't gone over today that you wanted to address? Um, so like one thing I will say like about because I talked a little bit about sound design just now. So um, you know, there are certainly people that like are not like sound design people, and that's totally fine. Um, but yeah, I would recommend, like, even if you don't create your own sounds, is just starting to save your racks, saving samples, creating like your sample folders and organizing within those sample folders, so that um, basically you find the sounds that you like, right? And then I would say that again, relating this back to DJing, when you delete the songs that you will probably never DJ, never play, the same could be said for your samples, right? If there's samples that you just like happen to download at a certain point, clean your library out, delete sounds that you don't think you'll use, and that will make it easier to find the sounds that you like, and then yeah, use a tagging system that will help you. Yeah, I think that's all I have for today. If there are no questions, I appreciate you all being here today. Our next workshop, wrong thing here. Oh, I'm glad that was helpful. our next workshop is well, we've got a few couple of things. So there's building a DJ career if you're a DJ with Tara, sorry, don't know how to pronounce her name, on the 19th next month. And then the next one that I'm teaching is arranging in Ableton, which I feel like arranging is like a very big topic. September 25th. So yeah, I hope to see you there. Hop into the Discord if you're not already there. Let me go ahead and drop that in the link in the chat if you don't already have it. But otherwise, yeah, thank you all so much for your thoughtful questions. And yeah, cheers to organizing and creating more efficient workflows and allowing us to access our creativity way more quickly. But yeah, I'll see you all later, and I hope you have a great rest of the week. I'm glad it was helpful. Yeah, see y'all soon. Bye, guys.